G'day everyone, and welcome to another edition of CrowCast, brought to you by another edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by CrowCast. It was another disappointing result from the Adelaide Crows today against Fremantle, but joining me tonight in a minute is Macca. But in the meantime, let's crack right into it, shall we? Macca, how you going, mate? Oh, wait, let me unmute you. Macca, how you doing?
Well, probably slightly better than the Crows. It only has to be average, doesn't it? I think we got what we expected, Fiend.
Yeah, we did. Welcome to everyone who's joined us on Discord. Of course, you can join us on Discord by either using the Discord app and the invite link that's all over the place, or you can just go to aflcrowcast.com, go to the live chat page and follow your nose there, and you'll be able to get in straight away and join the usuals that are on the chat. And great to see J. Matt Kempy, Matt, Razor, Vardy, all the usual poor bastards that follow this once great club of ours. And of course, g'day to everyone who's also following and chatting on Facebook and YouTube. What'd you make of it, just quickly, Mac?
Well, in a nutshell, we're not at AFL standard at the moment. We're capable of producing some minutes of AFL standard, but overall, and whether you say it's because of just natural ability, or whether it's because of some of the selections, some of the team placements, is it the game plan, whatever it is. Well, we just are incapable of producing AFL football at the standard that it should be. And there's a lot of work to be done, and there should be a lot of reflection within the club. How did we get to this position? Because if you don't understand how you got there, it's going to be harder to work out how to get out of this situation.
That's right. And, not helped by another muckraking exercise by young Mr. McClure during the week. I mean, it's been done to death, and we've covered it here ad infinitum, but it's old news, and it really needs to be put to bed, and I don't know what McClure is actually trying to achieve at the moment.
Well, the interesting thing is that Sam McClure, he's been on this case. He was the newsbreaker on it in the first place because it was the making of him. He's Joe Nobody. He's still really Joe Nobody, but
he's been sacked by a lot of his gigs.
Yeah, he doesn't realise it. But this is his story, and he thinks that using this story, he doesn't care how much he bashes the Crows with it. And unfortunately, I think this time he's actually spoken to people that used to play for the Adelaide Crows.
I think he's always had them in his pocket, Mac. I think he's just been waiting. I think he's had most of the details for a long time, I think. And he might have got a hold of CY or Huey or Eddie or someone like that, but he's had most of it. But what's the point? I mean, it's done now. The only thing that I will say is that, Rashido coming out the other week and saying what he said, it just reignited everything, and it was such a dumb thing for Roo to say. And to me, it just shows that maybe Roo and Chapman are the last two dominoes to fall to really rid the club of the cancer that was that freaking camp,
Yeah, I think, and you're 100% right there, Fiend. Unfortunately, I think Roo might have to be, because I really do like Roo, and I know that his heart's in the right place.
Yep.
Unfortunately, his mouth isn't, and I think that to cleanse the club, if you like it, so that it can actually go forward and not be associated with the past, that he possibly should be go as well. Chappie is going. They must bring an outsider in to be the chairman of the board. They can't use those people there, because those people sitting there are associated with our failure and our situation now. So it has to get the chairman of the board. They have to bring in somebody who was the guy who is interested in it, the one who used to be chairman of 36ers, I think it was.
Yeah.
Somebody like him with a high profile, not frightened to talk to the press, but going to say the right things when he does.
Yep.
And also, put some humanity back into this club, because Chapman hasn't got any humanity when he talks. There's a lot of things that have got to be done to get this club back to where it should be. They've done, when they did the coal last year, they've cut too deep, and they've left. I don't know what the basis that was done on salary or whatever, but what we've got left is some pretty ordinary footballers and some footballers that aren't ready, and that's where we're at the moment.
That's right. And probably the last thing that I'll say on this, because I want to get onto the results, Mac, but the last thing that I'll say is that we have to remember that the club over the last 5 years has been through more than any club could possibly imagine, triggered obviously by the tragedy with Phil and the mismanagement that followed. And the club, I think, needs some clear air. And unfortunately, I think Rashudo's got a lot of good qualities, and as you said, Macca, I think his heart's in the right place. But I think in order for the club to get the clear air that it needs in order to rejuvenate itself, it just needs to clear the decks. And, for that reason, Mark either has to take a back seat and a much less visible role with the club, or he just needs to leave altogether. And I think until we get that clear air and new faces, new ideas, and a bit of reinvigoration of the club, it's just going to continue.
Yes. And the interesting thing is that for Sam McClure to grab the headlines as he has with this particular article, when Collingwood have got so much shit on their plate, and Eddie has actually virtually lied, or when I say lied, he's at least presented a different picture to the truth.
Been a bloody hypocrite. I mean, he was all over Jack Stevens' situation and saying that, everyone deserves to know and blah, blah, blah. And then he shuts up shop with Sidebottom and now De Goey.
And says that he's on record as saying that the next person that does something stupid should get 5 games. Yeah. And then when his bloke gets 4, he says it's contestable and all the rest of it. Yeah. He doesn't mention the fact about being drunk. He doesn't mention about at 7:30 a.m. with no knickers on, that he's wandering down the street and then he gets picked up by a cop and then got taken off to the jail. None of those things got mentioned.
No, that's right. So that's right. Never mind. Look, I mean, we'll leave it there. We're on record in terms of how we feel about it, and hopefully those associated with the club that were associated through all this disaster of the last 4 or 5 years have enough humility and enough care for the club to be able to see what needs to happen, a little bit like Don Pike, understanding that he wasn't part of the solution. I think Rob Chapman and Mark Rashudo need to understand that as much as they've done for the club, they are no longer part of the solution, and they need to clear the decks. So let's hope that over the course of the season, they can see that. The very last thing that I'll say is I really didn't like Matthew Nix's answer to the question about how he was going to address the so-called new revelations brought out this week. If I was Nixie, I would just shut all that down and say, look, it's dealt with. This is a new playing group, and you blokes need to put it to bed because it's done. Regrettable, but it's done, and we're moving on.
Yeah, and I would have quite right. He just said, "Look, that's not on my watch, and I've got my own agendas, and that's what we will be following."
He had the opportunity to really shut that down, and I felt like he missed that opportunity, and it'll linger as a consequence. Anyway, look, mate. Let's get on to the results of this week, shall we? And Thursday night, the Saints and Carlton put on a reasonably good display of footy. The Saints getting up 11-7-73 to Carlton on the back of Paddy Cripps, really particularly in the second half, 8-7-55, a margin there of 18 points. Did you watch that one?
Certainly did. St Kilda just a little bit too good. They brought in some imports. They brought in some speed, and I think that their imports played pretty well for them in that particular game. Carlton, I think, came to earth with a bit of a thud. I think they got, a bit carried away with Bryce's blue baggers and all that crap. But they had a win, but they come back crunching back to earth.
Yep.
I will say this about Carlton: they try. They're not there, but they try. And the other thing I would like to say about that particular game, they really must be looking at what's that bloody bloke they got from us sort of in the forward pocket.
McGovern.
I couldn't even remember his name. Is that Paul? Honestly, he's playing. Honestly, they pay him a good salary, and I tell you what, they're getting nothing. He's hopeless. No,
that's right. They've got to look at their forward line. Actually, they're playing Casbolt a little bit differently. Harry McKay's sort of not making any impact when he plays, and McGovern either is not making any impact. And I think they're probably one key player down through the midfield.
They are though. But they're a star player down up forward, Charlie Curnow. I mean, how good
that's right.
If he was playing, would be a different thing.
But still, Paddy Cripps carries that midfield too much, and I don't think he's 100% fit. I think he's got a bit of It wasn't as proppy this week as he was last week, but I noticed last week he was really proppy on that knee. So they got to concentrate on that, I think. Going forward, and give him some assistance. Look, Essendon, kind of surprisingly, got up over Collingwood, 10-3-63 to 7-6-48, a margin there of 15 points. And the Bombers just sort of ticking along all right.
2 games in one. It started off looking like Collingwood were going to kick them off the park. They had, I think, out of the first lot of touches, I can't remember, it was something stupid, like about 60 or 70 to 5, something like that. Yeah. Might even been higher. It was just, I thought it was going to be how far. Then I will say this about the Bombers, because they do move the ball very quickly at times, and when they get that type of game going and get it into their forward line very quickly, they can actually play good footy. But the one thing about it is they'll always let you down ultimately, I reckon.
Well, they're making the best out of a pretty average the average sort of squad, really, in my view. And it's good to see Truck Rutten doing well, but I think that they will fall away at the pointy end. I just don't think they've got the. I don't think they've got the firepower.
That's probably what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. What else have we got here? We've got West Coast defeating a disappointing Sydney, and West Coast finally showing a little bit of form. 11-11-77 to Sydney, 6 goals, 7-43, a margin there of 5 goals to West Coast. I didn't actually watch that game. Did you watch it at all?
Yeah. There's 2 factors to that particular game. One is that Sydney beat us by a point, that it doesn't make them a very good side, and West Coast got a little bit of their mojo back. So it was not a great game, but West Coast did at least get a bit of their game going again.
Yep. The Cats, predictably, I mean, I think the Suns did as well as they could have been expected, to be honest with you, with 2 massive milestones and playing at Alphabet Stadium. The Cats getting up 13-11-89 to the Suns 8-4-54. The Suns not assisted by the number 1 pick, getting a shoulder that's probably going to rule him out for a fair while, I reckon. That looked pretty bad. But a margin there of 37 points. But I don't think the Suns were actually disgraced in that result.
Far from it, because they did look. Losing Rowell is like losing back 2 players out of your side, because he's so good.
Absolutely.
And they battled on manfully. And talking about Rowell too, he actually he popped out when his elbow hit the ground. He actually was bashing it back, and he wanted to try and play on. He's a gutsy guy. He really is.
He'll be a star. He really will. And the media make a lot of these sort of things, but I did think that it was interesting that Selwood went up to him afterwards, and I think there might be a little bit of a mutual respect there. Selwood probably recognises a little bit of himself in Matty Rowell, and I'm looking forward to watching Rowell play. I think he's going to be an absolute jet over the next 10 years if he can stay fit.
And the interesting thing is both Rowell and Anderson committing long-term futures as well to the Suns.
Yeah, haven't they turned that around up there?
Have they ever? I mean, the Lycurgus and Rankin, now these two, they're building up a very nice team. They actually might make finals soon.
Yep, absolutely. Look, the Bulldogs 13,987 are up against a disappointing North Melbourne, 5 goals, 838. I mean, the Bulldogs have been very hit and miss over the first 4 or 5 rounds, but North would be disappointed with that result. A margin there of, 49 points?
I only saw glimpses of that game, thank God. It was a shitty-looking game.
Yeah.
It's just like a struggling game. North Melbourne didn't do very well. The Bulldogs, the one thing we'll say about the Bulldogs, they started off like pussycats, and then for the first couple of games of the season, then they've converted back to their desperate ways. And there's one thing about them, when they do that, they're very hard to beat.
Yeah.
North Melbourne must have been extremely disappointed with their effort because they always pride themselves on having that same sort of attitude to the ball. But little bits that I saw that, I would say their coach would be very disappointed with their effort.
Yeah, I think so. I think I would be too. The match of the round, it was billed as, but Brisbane comfortably in the end, 12-13-85 over the pair, 6-12-48. Margin there of 27 points. And Brisbane looking the goods right now.
Well, Brisbane are very good. I think they have got a good side, and that you can pencil them definitely in for the finals. I still haven't got Port locked away for the finals yet, because if you look at the 3 teams that they did beat before they played Brisbane, those 3 teams they beat were sitting 16th, 17th and 18th. So they haven't as yet played the cream teams yet. So I'm still hoping that they might finish in 9th position like they usually do.
Yep. I don't think so, Mac. I think they're a lock for top 4.
Really? I'm not convinced. I am not convinced because I thought Brisbane made them look ordinary.
Well, I think Brisbane did very well at shutting down their prime movers. Yes. I think Port have got a couple of problems. Robbie Gray looks like he's struggling, and I think defensively they might be exposed against tall forward lines. But by the same token, there's not many teams that line up like Brisbane, and that's why I think against a lot of these other teams that are around the mark, like your Collingwoods, etc., and your GWS, I think they'll match them, and I think they're a top 4 chance still.
Well, the area that concerns me with them is their midfield is not. If you look at Brisbane's midfield, far better than Port Adelaide's, and there are a few other teams that have got much better midfields, and I think that will ultimately be one of their worries.
Possibly. But anyhow, it's going to be interesting to see how their season plays out, because really, I mean, you could probably argue that was their first real test, so, and they failed. So Kenny Hinkley acknowledging they've got a little way to go, so we'll see how their next month works out. Richmond 12-7-79 beating Melbourne this afternoon 8-4-52. Richmond just sort of reasserting themselves a little bit, although I don't rate Melbourne as an opposition terribly much. But a margin there of 27, I think they'd be back. They'd be happy just to get back on the winners list, really.
I think you're correct on all counts there. Melbourne, they are very good at burning the ball, and Richmond got a little bit back to playing the way that they have been successful with. And I wouldn't say they were all the way back there. And I don't think it was a very high quality game, but by the same token, I'd say that Hardwick would be absolutely delighted to get a bloody win for a change.
Oh, yeah, they'd be very happy to get back on the winners list. And the last one with not far to go, it looks like the Giants are going to get up over Hawthorn at the moment. The Giants 12-3-75 over the Hawks, 7-7-49, with not long to go in the last quarter, about 8 minutes, I think. So barring some sort of surging comeback, which we nearly got caught by last week, it looks like the Giants are going to get up on with that one, which is probably predictable. I think Hawthorn are probably a middle-of-the-road team so far this year.
Yeah, look, I did watch the first 3 quarters of that game, and I would say that the Giants are starting to play the type of football that they are capable of, because at their best, they are a premiership chance, and they started to play some very good football. Hawthorn, as you said, I think they sit there middle of the road. They could make the 8. They might miss the 8. They'll be around that middle section.
Yep.
But GWS, they are too good for them.
Yep, I think so. Let's have a look at the ladder, and of course it doesn't account for that Hawthorn game, but at the moment we still have Port at the top, joined by Brisbane, both on 4 wins. Port with better percentage owing to the fact that they've played a few more cellar dwellers than Brisbane, I think. The Cats and St Kilda in 3rd spot. That's a weird ladder. It doesn't account for the Bombers game either, but the Bombers are up there in 3rd spot with 4 wins now as well. And then you've got the Cats, the Saints, the Suns, the Bulldogs, and the Giants on 3 wins. And then you got the rest with us down the bottom, mate. Down the bottom. Have we ever started? What's our worst start? Is it 6 zip or zip 6? I think it's zip 6, isn't it?
Well, we've certainly had a 6 zip. I was only trying to speculate on that earlier, whether it's 6 zip or 7 zip. I know we've definitely had a 6 zip, and I think we have a very good chance to repeat that again. We might even go 17 zip. Who knows?
Well. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that a little bit more in a minute, but 53% with not even a whimper, and of course, the percentages are probably a little bit exaggerated by the fact that they are lower scoring games. But my God, I haven't seen a started season this bad. Vardy in the chat obviously gives us all the right stats, and he confirms 6 zip in 2010 or 11. So. That's close enough, Vardy. Thanks, mate, for supporting us. It's not happy. Let's talk about the Crows game, shall we? And it was Fremantle 8 goals 6-54 to Adelaide 4-10-34, a margin of 20 points. After a shocking first quarter, we looked like we were getting back into the game. We pretty much evened it up at 3/4 time, and then. Freo got a little bit of a run on out of the midfield at the start of the last quarter, and it was too much for us.
The interesting thing about that thing was that early in the piece, I thought we were, with poor skills, we were sort of matching them, but some of those set shots we missed for goal, I would back you to kick them.
Well, now, Macca, during watching the game, I remembered a while back, we had a little bet, remember, that I couldn't kick 30 from 30. And I was watching the game and I thought, I should go out to Scotch College across the road and just, from where they miss their shots, I should have a shot from where they miss their shots. And I reckon I'd kick every one. Now, granted, I'm not fatigued and, under the pump pressure-wise, but I'm also fucking twice their age. Oh, yeah, well, I reckon I might do that during the week. I might take the young lad out across the road, and I'm going to mark out where they miss their shots from, and I'm going to try and kick the goals. Because as poorly as we played in large parts of the game, we had every right to win it.
Well, if we kick those goals, and it must be a massive deflationary factor on the players when. Oh God, yeah. You take a mark, you're 20 metres out in front, 30 metres out in front at most. And then you just keep missing. And it's not, I think young Lockie missed, was it 2? Yeah. I think they're 2. And they were just gimmies, absolute gimmies. And everybody's ass just goes plop to the ground,
Oh, yeah. Well, you work so hard to get the ball into a scoring position and then, to be let down, you expect to be going back to the middle, and then all of a sudden you've got to be manning up and watching Freo dance it out of defence again. It is very deflating. I just need to pause and just say g'day to everyone who's joined us on Facebook and YouTube. It's a really good turnout, and also on Twitch. G'day to all those people, as well as the people that have joined us on Discord. Get in amongst the chat. It's a good chat going on in Discord at the moment. Mate, aside from the fact that our kicking for goal let us down, I felt like, and the stats will back this up when we look at it, I might just start throwing up the head-to-head stats, because we actually were level or in front in a lot of the head-to-head stats for a large portion of the game, and it just showed the difference in the way that we moved the ball compared to Fremantle.
Well, there was a large difference. There's no doubt about that. For a start, they tried to hit a chest. That's something we didn't do too often. But I really don't. I can't tell you what our game plan is.
Well, and that's the point I was alluding to, I guess, is that we don't at the moment seem to have any real system. It seems to be a game style that's very much focused on individual efforts. There doesn't seem to be any real plan. We seem to be playing our forwards very high for long periods of the game, which means that when we do transition out of defence, it's often very disjointed and, searching for targets and all the rest of it. We seem to have players out of position quite often. I don't know whether it's a matter of the players not yet gelling into Matthew Nix's game style, or whether it's Matthew Nix's game style being a little bit different to what we're used to seeing. But I certainly can't work out what they're trying to do out there.
Well, if we listen to what Nixie says, what he says is that his game plan is built on defence, and that's fine. It's built on defence, but there is a middle of the ground, and there's also a forward part of the ground. So it's not just about getting the ball in the back lines. Something has to happen to the bloody ball to get it down the other end and get it through the big stick. So that's the part that seems to be missing out of the game plan.
Yeah.
So the answer seems to be like, we burn your ass off trying to get the ball in the back lines, and we'll worry about the rest after that. Because I really can't see a game plan at all. With Pipe, we used to do a lot of switching. We used to change angles. That was one of the things that he brought in, which I thought was very clever.
Yeah.
But I can't see anything like that. And maybe I'm a moron and I'm missing it, but I just can't see it.
No. The other thing I think that contributes to it, Macca, is that our players, as a group, are extremely low on confidence at the moment. And you can see that by the way that they're playing. They're not willing to take any chances. They're not willing to make those diagonal kicks. They are very jumpy with ball in hand. They're very too grabby in terms of trying to take the ball cleanly, etc. And I think one of Nix's biggest challenges is to free up the playing group and to give them license to make mistakes. Because at the moment, it feels to me very much like the back end of last year, where the players just went completely into their shells because they lost confidence.
Well, the only thing I disagree with, I don't think they've come out of their shells because they're back in their shells, all right. There is no confidence whatsoever, and I've actually listed the players. I won't jump ahead. But I've just the players into categories of good, okay, and bad, and it's a very small good list. And
I'd be willing to bet, Mac, that your good list, and we won't jump ahead just yet, but the good list would be largely the youngsters. It does seem to be the senior group at the moment who are struggling.
Well, I have 4 new names there.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, let's look at some head-to-heads, and apologies, my little stat tracker crapped itself as badly as the Crows' game plan this week, so I'm just plagiarising.
So it's buggered. It's buggered.
It's completely cooked. But we went back to a real handball-happy game, Mac. They had 197 kicks and only 88 handballs, Fremantle. We had 170 kicks and 133. So our kick-to-handball ratio was imbalanced once again, and Freo, particularly in the first and the last quarter, they just cut us up with those short kicks, and we seem to be playing a sitting back kind of zone defence, and we just kept giving them territory.
Yeah, we did. There's no doubt about that, and they were. I won't say names, I'm not allowed to, but a couple of the young boys had stats of 4 and 8, 3 and 9, and the first one is the kicking, then the second one's the handball.
Yeah.
And if you've got the young boys doing that, my God, that's the wrong tactic already.
That's right. Yeah. Look, as a consequence, of course, the marks were heavily in Freo's favour, 109 to 79. Tackles 39 to 41. Riley got towed up a little bit in the hit-outs department, although I felt that he was good around the ground.
He tries.
Clearances. We ended up winning the clearances, although it didn't look convincing to me. I think it's that. I think we touched on this last week. It's that second disposal out of the clearance, and it's the effectiveness of the clearance that really hurts us in terms of how well we benefit from getting a positive clearance number. Our inside 50s were even. And we did, after the first quarter where it was quite one-sided, I felt like that we did have our fair share of inside 50s, although the ball was coming in far differently, Mac, into our 50 than it was into theirs.
Yeah, and the other thing is you probably haven't got it broken down by quarters, but at three-quarter time, the experts were saying that they, on what they'd seen in the third quarter, where we did build up a little bit of momentum, that they thought that we might run over Fremantle in the last quarter.
Yeah.
And that was never eventuated. It went really the other way around. And
we'll talk about why that might have happened in a
minute. That's what I was going to go into. Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that after.
Because I'm a bit pissy about that one. Clearances 24 to 20, as I mentioned, and mostly that was around the ground. We did quite well in stoppage clearances. Metres game was relatively even. Turnovers relatively even. Tackles inside 50, we actually won that stat. So, look, Mac, I can't understand why the club, the selectors, and the coaching staff cannot see what everyone watching can see, in that we can't play two crouches in the same rotation in the middle.
Correct. 100%
Why can't they see it? And I felt like it killed our momentum in the beginning of the last quarter. I felt like the last thing we needed was we needed to burst out of the centre in that last quarter and kick a couple of quick ones.
Well, there was exactly an example of that. I think it was Brad. Was it Matt to Brad or Brad to Matt?
One of the two.
I think if Brad had it, and could have gone charging down the centre, went sideways to his brother, and it all got stuffed up.
That's exactly right. And look, I get it. They've played together for years and all the rest of it, but this is professional football now, and they can't just be doing it. And I put on Twitter at some stage during the game, I think it was at half-time, that we should have a drinking game and drink every time one of the crouches gave it to the other. And I reckon we wouldn't be having this podcast if I'd have done that, because I'd be rolling around the ground drunk at the moment. And the amount of times...
You might have preferred that to watching
that. The amount of times that Brad sold players into trouble with his disposal. He completely lacks composure with his disposal. And, you know, a number of times he sold players into trouble and cost us a turnover. And he has this habit of trying to make it someone else's problem. And sorry to quote Dwayne there, but I think having Matt there, his first look is always to Matt, and I actually think it costs him, half a second, and it just puts him under the pump.
Yeah, because I thought Brad actually played well in terms of his effort. He played very well in terms of getting the ball, but as you said, it was the disposal that let him down. I just hope he keeps that form up, getting the ball, because he's a must trade at the end of the year to get another very good pick alongside us, because I don't really think he's part of our future.
Well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because an informed Brad Crouch is actually what we've been wanting to see, and everyone will say he won the BNF last year and all the rest of it, but I personally think that he won that by default. given our season, and I think Daniel Talia could probably count himself a little unlucky, and a couple of others. But notwithstanding that, we haven't seen Brad in full flight for a number of years for whatever reason. But the simple fact is he doesn't have the burst pace. He doesn't have the composure inside. And I think we need to decide with the Crouch boys, and particularly with Brad, because I don't think Matt's got too many other roles available to him. But with Brad, I think we need to decide how we want him to play and then just play him. But the one thing that I'd really, really hope that they look at the tapes and see is that Matt and Brad in the same rotation has a very negative impact on Brad's game and also on the way we move the ball out of stoppage.
Well, if you compare how Brad used the ball this week with Matt playing and in the same rotations, and compare that to last week, where Brad, I thought, was very good with the ball in hand, and he was actually kicking a lot better, and he's trying to put the ball to advantage a lot better, rather than going for little dinky choices. So you're right, and I think that probably, I mean, I'm not saying we have to get rid of Brad. What I'm saying is that if there is some really, really starry number, say we finish bottom and that there's a brilliant number 2 pick as well, then I would be happy for him to trade him. If that's not the case, when we keep them, so be it. But then if we're going to keep both of them, I'd like almost like a golden rule. They're not in the same rotation.
No. I've never been a huge fan of Brad. I think that's no secret to anyone who listens to this podcast. But I'd much prefer that he was playing well than not. Obviously, I don't wish bad form on anybody. But as you mentioned, Mac, the stats are very clear. 20 kicks, 4 handballs last week without Matt and the team. 15 kicks, 13 handballs this week. And not only that, I felt like his ability to actually be constructive with the ball was far less this week than last week. And a lot of that is to do with Matt's presence, in my opinion.
Yes, because he's looking at other alternatives than the obvious alternative. I mean, when you've got the ball and you look around, as a player, they're generally, sometimes there's none, but generally there is one that's going to be a bit more advantageous than the other, and sometimes it can be a very clear one.
Yeah.
But if you start looking around for alternatives, you've lost that little yard that you had on your opponent, so you start kicking under pressure. And secondly, you'll probably kick it, won't be disposing of the ball as well as you would have if you'd just done it straight away. Yeah. So, I think that Matt's presence does inhibit Brad a lot.
Yeah. Patrick on YouTube says, trade Matt. Look, I struggle to find a team that would benefit from Matt. And to be perfectly honest with you, Macca, the team that I think would actually really benefit from Matt Crouch is Carlton. I think they would really benefit from having a grunt inside player that could free up Cripps a bit and preserve Cripps' body a bit. And they're one of the few teams in the competition at the moment that I think would actually benefit from having Matt Crouch in their side.
Yeah, I agree with you. And he also, if they do run around and make leads, he does love to do those little chippy kicks.
Yeah. Look, anyway, so let's have a look at some of the individual stats, Macca, because I think they're a little bit misleading. We'll start with Brad. He had 28 touches, and as I mentioned, 15 and 13. He had good contested possessions. He had 9, but he played fairly much outside. His disposal efficiency was surprisingly good, 21 effective disposals at 75%. Had 6 clearances, 3 intercepts, 3 score involvements, 370 metres gained, 4 tackles. It looks a good game from Brad Crouch. Statistically, it looks a good game from Brad Crouch. But then you look at 8 turnovers, and then you also apply the eye test to the match itself, where you see that some of those effective disposals just sold teammates into trouble. Yes. And the conclusion that you reach is that whilst he gets good numbers, I don't think I don't actually think that I've seen Brad Crouch influence a game or win a game. And he's one of the few elite midfielders in the competition that doesn't have the ability to turn a game, like a Steele side bottom or, even young Matty Rowell for that matter, he doesn't have the ability to do that.
Sadly, I do think probably the right coach using him in the right manner probably could turn him into that player. And that would be, use him as a burst player, because when he gets the ball and bursts straight through, and which he did a little bit last week, if that was his game by nature, that he did that every time, he could be a very valuable player, because it would keep the defence peppered and under pressure all the time. And not being the most accurate kick, they wouldn't know where it's going to go either, which is, from a defender's point of view, it makes them very, very nervous. So he could really be the player that we want him to be, but you'd have to give him license, and you'd have to feed him a little bit as well, and you'd have to tell him to go flat out and ignore the guys to your side, straight down.
Yep. Now, Burn on Twitch, come on, mate. He reckons Macca should have his own radio show. Well, there's 2 points to that. First of all, no, he shouldn't. But second of all, you could argue, Macca, that you already do have your own bloody radio show, because you keep going on to AA and winning the vouchers.
Well, and quite rightly so, because, when you hear some of the gibberish that people ring up about... mate,
some would say that about us, mate. Bloody hell.
Well, all I do is I wait till it's a decent prize, and I think it's something constructive to say, and out it comes to me.
I reckon if we offered bloody Sammy's vouchers on this program, you'd probably not log in, and then you'd ring up and try and win that bloody voucher too.
I would. Definitely. I like Sammy's.
Look, Matty Crouch had probably the most ineffective 27 disposal game I've ever seen. 10 kicks, 17 handballs, 5 tackles, 3 inside 50s that I don't recall, 4 clearances. He only went at 66%. But I just, at no stage do I actually recall Matty Crouch, again, having any positive influence on the game. And his defensive work, Mac, sorry to interrupt, just to finish that off, his defensive work is appalling. His fitness, his pace, his ability to run is appalling. There was an example on the outer wing where he just either simply chose not to chase or physically couldn't chase. I can't tell which one it is, but either way, it's not AFL standards.
No, he doesn't work hard enough both ways. There's no doubt about that. And I think that's one of the reasons why he got dropped, if anything, actually, in the first place, to make him work a little bit harder chasing his opponent. But I still think he definitely doesn't work hard enough. The other thing, too, his very first kick of the game, if I remember rightly, he did go for a long kick down the forward line and put it neatly on the chest of the opponent. So he then reverted back to the 15-metre kicks after that most of the time. So while he gets the ball a lot, he's not that damaging.
Yeah, and speaking of being completely ineffective, Rory Laird, again, 14-11 for 25, took 6 marks, 1 tackle, 2 inside 50s, 3 contested possessions, went at 76%, gave us 334 metres, but again, I don't recall Lairdy having any real positive impact on the game from half back.
What was his efficiency rating, Fee?
Well, his efficiency was 76%.
Well,
it calls into question that whole stat, because to me, I guess there's a difference between efficiency, which is whether the ball made a target or whatever. But in terms of his effective disposals, like his disposals actually putting a teammate to advantage, I can't recall one. Well,
I think we must have players that can mark a 60 metre high ball, because he's lofting the ball a lot when he's kicking lately.
Oh, look, he just puts it on people's head, and we're not talking about key position players. He puts them on Lockie Murphy's head. He put one on Rory Sloane's head. Like, it's just, you can't kick the ball to your teammates like that. It's not putting it to advantage.
Well, 2 years ago, he used to be pretty deadly with his disposal. I reckon he used to be running in the 90s, didn't he?
Yeah, but there was still that 20 or 30 metre pass. But what he used to do, Macca, was get that little diagonal off. Yes. And he's not doing that now. He's kicking down the line. So, maybe the options aren't there for Lairdy, but by God, he's not making anything happen. And we have to remind ourselves with Rory Laird, he's an ex-All-Australian player. He was Mr. Reliable in our team not that long ago.
Well, yes, and at the moment he's just another AFL player at the moment, and
Yes.
Look, he must have a lot of gears to go in him, because he's not playing at the level that we know that he is capable of, and maybe he isn't. Maybe he's lost a little yard in pace, which then brings you back to the pack, which means you don't have the same time for your decision making, or it just puts you under that little bit of pressure. But he's certainly not. Well, if he was 100 in the year when he was All-Australian, he's probably about a 70 at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think Lairdy would agree with that. I don't think he'd be terribly satisfied with his form. And let's put it into context. Our defence is getting absolutely hammered at the moment. Absolutely hammered.
Fair comment.
And, it's batten down the hatches time in defence. And so they're playing very deep. The ball's coming in quickly. There's not a lot of time to set up and regroup and all the rest of it. But we've got to get our drive from somewhere. And at the moment, I'm not seeing a lot of creative play from Laird. And I would repeat what I said last year. I'd really like them to actually try swapping Lairdy and Brown around. To take a bit of the heat off Laird and allow him just to be a defender. And B, to take advantage of Lukey Brown, because I think Lukey Brown would offer us more at the moment coming out of defence than what Rory Laird is.
Well, I think you're right, because Brownie is very, very good where he plays, because he's a real lockdown player. But he did play as a midfielder as a young lad, so he might enjoy it sitting out there on the half-back flank and being a little bit more creative, because he is a very, very good kicker of the ball as well. Yeah,
so look, what else have we got here? The one bloke that I thought was very good today was Tommy Diday. 18 disposals, 7-11, took 5 marks, 11 contested possessions, went at 94%. Didn't give us a lot in terms of drive out of defence, but I thought defensively he was quite good, and he's come back from that ACL quite nicely, I thought.
Have a great big tick against his name. I thought, look, as you said, like, he didn't turn the game around, and it was charging down one way, he didn't turn it around and make it charge back the other way. But he saved so much, and he just read it so well. And and some of those marks, it's just how incredible how easy he makes it look. Now he's just read it so beautifully. He's just in the right spot. So he got a big tick for me.
Yeah. Smithers got 20 touches, 15 and 5, took 7 marks, 3 inside 50s, went at 85%, gave us nearly 400 metres, turned it over a little bit. I must admit, I didn't notice Smith's game as much as some, but he did give us a little glimpse of form that has been sorely missed over the last month, I thought.
I actually gave him a tick because I thought he busted his guts, actually. I thought it's the hardest I've seen Smith go in for the ball, which probably does negate his game a little bit because, he's a runner, but he's still got the 400-odd metres gain. I think there's no doubt that I thought Brodie got not quite as to the level of Dodo, but pretty close to it.
Yeah. Tommy Lynch, I don't know what to make of Tom, because I felt like he started the game okay and was coming into his own in the second quarter, and I just felt like he was going to start giving us that real connection that we were looking for between defence and attack. But my God, his disposal is absolute rat shit at the moment, Macca. It's never been great, but at the moment it's bloody terrible.
Yeah, I had him in the middle category, not a real good effort or not a real rotten effort, because he did get the ball reasonably well, but as you say, his disposal was lacking, and so just a middle of the road game for me from Lynch.
He is such an important, that role in our team, in the way that we play, is such an important role, and the problem is that Tommy gets up the ground, and when he gets the ball, because we're in transition, everyone's running forward. And when you turn the ball over from that position, you've got everyone out of position. You've got everyone ahead of the ball gets turned over, and it hurts so quickly, because not only is it in a vulnerable position on the ground, but it's also caught all of his teammates out of whack. and it just opens us right up. It's such a damaging thing.
Well, it's a known fact, isn't it, that the turnover is usually the greatest source of scoring in the AFL game. Yeah. So, and literally does turn it over a bit.
Well, and it's not only that he turns it over, Mac, it's where he does.
The places, yeah.
It's, high up on the wing or, through that middle of the ground. It's horrific, Anyway.
Yeah, they're going one way, next minute they become all out of position.
Yeah. Look, of the rest of our players, I thought Sloaney was down, although it was good to see him out of the midfield rotation. I like the fact that he was playing sort of that defensive wing, probably by necessity, as you said to me prior to the show off air, but I just liked the fact that he was given a bit of respite from that in and under crash bash that he goes through every week.
Yeah, don't think he could have played otherwise with his ankle. I think they were avoiding him. He didn't attend not one centre rotation, and he basically, I think it was oscillating between a wing and a half-back flank. And it was a modest game from him, but it wasn't. He competes whenever it's near him, but by using him in that fashion, it also limits how much he can put into the game. But also, when you look at how much you're going to invest in the future, well, I suppose it doesn't really matter much.
Well, the problem with playing Sloaney on the outside, which I've certainly been screaming for a while, and playing him out on a wing, is that because he can't run at the moment because of his foot or his leg or whatever the hell he's got, we end up sacrificing him as a defensive wingman, which kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, he ended up playing...
He rolled his ankle. His ankle.
So he ended up playing, sort of across half-back for the large portion of the game, and therefore didn't give us... how much did he give us in terms of inside 50s? He only gave us... He gave us 3 inside 50s for the game.
Yeah, that'd be it.
And only gave us 217 metres gained, which from a wingman, particularly of Sloane's calibre, you'd want a bit more. So, I don't know. It was good to see him out of that rotation, but if he's carrying a niggle, for God's sakes, why play him? Just don't play him.
Yeah, fair enough.
What else do we have with our seniors? I thought Riley O'Brien, I guess I'll class him as a senior. Again, it was a game of two facets for Riley. I thought he was really good around the ground, but got stitched up a little bit in the middle.
Which is why I gave him a middle rating,
yeah. Talia was dependable without doing anything amazing. Luke Brown, I guess...
He was good. He tried very hard.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Luke Brown, I think Luke would have spent the majority of the time on Walters when Walters was forward, and did okay apart from that one hanger that Walters took, which no one could really defend. Jake Kelly, I thought, was disappointing.
Didn't have a good one.
No, and a couple of moments where he just highlighted how much he stifles our run by his lack of willingness to move the ball on quickly. It was really noticeable on a couple of occasions.
Yeah, and there's always rumours around that he wants to go back into Collingwood. And I think he did ask to go back to Collingwood one year, didn't he? Would you be open to clearing him?
I'd be open. Look, if someone wants to go, I'd say let him go, unless they were really a top 5 player.
What do you reckon he's worth?
Third rounder.
Yeah, well...
Depends on who wants him. If he's going back to Collingwood, would they pay a third rounder for him? Maybe not. Maybe with something coming back the other way, they might.
No, it's interesting because I know that he's asked before, and I think he's out of contract at the end of this year. So
yeah, he could possible. Go. Hartigan, look, I thought he tried, but I wonder why the hell he was played. I know Fisher. I know that Fisher was probably looking for a breather, but what about Geordie Butts?
Well, he stole my line.
Kyle, for God's sake. And Kyle, look, Hartigan tried. He did try. He laid a couple of good tackles, made a few good spoils. He certainly wasn't our worst player defensively. But to me, Kyle Hartigan is there for when Daniel Talia needs a break. And Geordie Butts needs to get into this 22. And, I'd much rather see Butts in and get towed up than Hartigan in for no bloody reason.
Well, I'm 100% on the same page as you. I was very disappointed to see Hardigan come back. You know that he's not one of my favourites because while he tries like hell, and nobody's ever going to ever convince me that he doesn't try, he just has brain fades and he doesn't put himself in the right position. His opponent took an unopposed mark. At least with Fisher Mackesy was getting outbodied, but his opponent took a mark. And where's Hardigan? I'm looking around for him, and he's about 10 metres away from him.
I think that's a bit unfair because the ball was moving fairly quickly into their forward line, and I think by and large Hardigan is pretty solid overhead. The trouble is that he makes too many mistakes by foot.
Well, I am prejudiced.
Yeah, but look, the simple fact is that Kyle is a good, honest player, but we've got kids that we need to blood, and Geordie Butts is one of those players that we need to blood. So bloody put him in. And the last one, Mac, and I don't want to spend too much time on this guy, but is the writing on the wall for Tex Walker? I know that our forward line didn't get much service, but again, he puts his one hand up. He looked very slow. He looks stiff. He looks sore. Is time up for Tex?
Right, now you're an impartial person, Fiend, and you're not on the committee. You're just judging as a person who watches a lot of football.
Yep.
Give me a mark out of 10 for Tex Walker today.
Oh, 1 out of 10.
That's exactly what I've got written here. 1 out of 10, and you can't have a chap with his experience and with his alleged ability giving you 1 out of 10 when he's supposed to be a leader. And I know he's not the captain anymore, but he's been the captain. He's been seen as a spiritual type of captain, a spiritual type of leader. And when a guy goes up half-heartedly, when I say half-heartedly, got one hand in the air. He actually made one jump up with 2 feet off the ground, but unfortunately the ball wasn't quite there when he jumped.
Yeah.
And look, he looks like he's cooked. He really looks like he's cooked.
Look, I think so, Mac. I really do, and it's a sad way for Tex to go out. And I go back to that game against Carlton when he did his knee, and that was Tex's career right there because I don't feel like he's ever come back from that. And he was pantsing teams before that occurred, and it's such a disappointing thing for Tex as a player. And he's, at times he's carried the club on his back, etc., etc. But I think when Fogg is ready to go, and even maybe before that, but I think certainly when Fogg is ready to go, Tex is the one that makes way.
Well, I 100% agree with you. And because if we go on performance, it has to be that way. I'd also like to see a situation where, you're talking about bringing young butts into the back lines, and I'm a supporter of that as well. Young Mackesy, I'd like to see him played in a forward role, with, say, Fogarty at centre-half forward and Mackesy at the full forward position. Because, look, it's all about getting these people, these young lads, a lot of experience, and young Mackesy is a versatile type of player, and I'd rather see him playing at this level. And as a forward, he's going to have... he's not going to be... It'll be his job to try and get the ball rather than try and stop somebody else. So it'll just give him a little bit more freedom to do his own thing. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Look, it's not an easy conversation to have about Tex Walker, but
you have to be honest. We're kidding ourselves. He was terrible today. Terrible.
Yeah, he was terrible. I mean, he had 6 touches at 50%, 76 metres gained. I don't think he had a shot on goal, did he? No marks. He's a key forward. He's there to take marks and kick goals, and he had no influence whatsoever. All right. Anyway, look, let's have a look at the juniors because that's the future. Macca, Chase Jones. Let's talk about Chase first of all. 3 and 9 for 12 touches. Didn't take a mark or lay a tackle. Laid one tackle. 8 contested possessions, went at 75% disposal efficiency, only gained us 83 metres. Spent a bit of time up forward again. When he's around the ball, he just shows you something, but he's just not around the ball enough.
Well, yeah, exactly. But also, he's got to learn to be a little bit more... 3 and 9 is a terrible ratio for a player to be making his way in football.
Yeah.
I would much rather, like, if he was 6 and 6 or just slightly positive with his kick, the number of kicks to handballs, and whether it's because through inexperience he finds himself in these difficult positions, then he has to do that. But I don't doubt his efforts, and he's got tons of pace, and I think he will make it. Whether he will make it as high as we want him to, I don't know, but he will certainly make it as an AFL player, and he'll make it as an AFL midfielder, and he's got dash. But at the moment, he's in a team that's got a lot of bad habits, and I think he just adopted some of them today.
Yeah, look, I think all Chase needs is a bit of time. I think the talk about his ceiling at the moment is probably irrelevant, because I don't think he's a fully developed AFL footballer yet.
No, you're right.
And he's got good pace. He's tenacious. I think having a better midfield around him would help, because everyone's a bit see ball, get ball in that midfield at the moment. There's not a lot of cohesion. But I just think for Chase, we just encourage him and keep playing him. But for goodness sakes, give him midfield minutes. Give him meaningful midfield minutes. First or second rotation, he has to be in there at least 75% of his time on ground, in my opinion.
Well, I'm with you 100%. That's the only way he's going to develop it. And there'll be games when I'll be critical of him like this, that he didn't use the ball as well as he should have.
Yep.
But the more he plays there, the more he does it, the more he'll get used to do it, and the better he'll do it.
Yes, exactly. Ned McHenry, much the same. I thought, in terms of endeavour and impact, I thought this was probably Ned's best game so far. And I think, similar to Chase, I think Ned just needs a little bit more strength. I feel like he's got really good moves, he's got good agility in close, and I think he's actually got a little bit of composure, but he lacks enough strength through the core to be able to break that first tackle. And I think that'll come
under pressure, yeah. But I must say this though, Fiend, and I'm not bagging McHenry here, but
no.
I'm going to bag the club here. When I look at Dersma, when I look at Butters, and then I'm looking at McHenry, I'm thinking we got shortchanged.
Well, it's a fair statement to say that Ned probably went a bit higher than what he should have in the draft. He's probably a good second or early third round pick, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
And there's a lot to say that young Chase probably went a little bit early. But, they're the blokes we've got, and I think both of them are AFL footballers, given the right conditioning and given the right coaching and played in the right positions.
And in fairness to them, surrounded by the right players as well.
Yes, I agree.
They can't do it on their own.
They are not a Matty Rao, or they're not a standout midfield. I don't think either of them are going to carry a midfield, but they're going to be solid parts of a good midfield, and I think both are worth persevering with. But I think both of them just need more time to develop physically, because neither of them are tall players. So they're going to have to be powerful through the core so they can break that first tackle and use their pace.
Well, Jones has actually put a little bit more on. Ned, of course, is little in terms of stature, and he's naturally fairly light. I admire his courage and his aggression, but to me, it always looks like he's an under 12 playing under 14s, and that's just why he's always he's his disposal's a bit scrappy at the moment, because he's an under 12 playing under 14s. Now he's got to somehow elevate himself up to be an under 14.
Yeah. But look, it was good to see Ned get more of the ball. He had 12 touches, 3 marks, kicked 2 behinds, should have kicked 2 goals, really.
He should have.
Should have kicked 2 goals, and it wouldn't have been a bad game from him had he nailed those 2 goals. So, progress for him. What'd you make of Billy Frampton? Billy Frampton, to me, is far too slow for AFL football, but he's a more natural looking forward than Himmelberg. Would you agree with that?
Yep, totally. Himmelberg, unfortunately, he's been around for a long time, and for some reason just doesn't step up. He just stays at the same level. Frampton, I think, can improve, Whether he's going to be the long-term answer, I don't know. But I think he's out of Frampton and Himmelberg. He's the one that we have to stick with this year because I think Himmelberg's not going to be on our list at the end of the year.
Well, I want to just ask you a quick question without notice. We've had a couple of blokes that have looked very promising in the SANFL as key position forwards. One is Elliot Himmelberg, and the other one is, I've forgotten his bloody name now, the son of the ruckman from Hawthorn. What was his name again? That we delisted a couple of years ago.
Did he list a minute? The ruckman for Hawthorn, did you say?
No. The son of a Hawthorn ruckman. Come on, chat, help me out. I've just gone completely blank right now. What's his bloody name?
No.
Come on, Vardy, give it to... Yeah, that's right, Harry Deer.
Oh, Harry, yes.
Harry Deer.
Well done, Vardy.
Both of those blokes looked very promising. In fact, I had high hopes for Harry Deer when I saw him a couple of times. His ability below his knees was fantastic, and he had a bit of tenacity, a bit of fire around the contest. But neither of those players kicked on. And I'm starting to wonder whether we have the ability or whether we have the personnel to be able to develop tall key forwards.
Well, not in recent times we haven't. That's for certain. But I don't know whether that's the case with Frampton or not. I think Frampton's got a...
well, Frampton's not a product of our development so far.
No, he's got to make his own way now. I mean, he's a semi-mature player in the sense that there's still growth of him to improve. Well, I'd hate to be a forward there anyhow.
Yeah, but we've never had a dominant big forward. We've had good forwards. We've had, obviously Mods and Scotty Hodges and a few other, probably the
medium size, yeah.
Probably the two most consistent centre half forwards that we've had in my view are Matty Robran and Mark Stevens, and both of them were only serviceable.
Correct.
Matty Robran used to straighten us up and give us a target, but he never took a game by the scruff of the neck. And Mark Stevens was probably a little bit more effective than Matty, but we have never really been able to develop a good key centre-half forward. And we seem to do very well at developing, hit-up forwards like Tex and Fogg and Mods and a few others, Scotty Hodges and that.
Barty.
Those sort of blokes. But we've never really been able to develop a key centre-half forward. And I wonder whether Himmelberg and Harry Deer before him have been hampered by the fact that they're just not getting good development.
And Vardy Magic...
Johnny Klug, come on. Johnny Klug was a legend. But Johnny Klug was a mature player. Johnny Klug was a mature player when he played for us, so I didn't include him, although, all hats off to Johnny Klug.
Look, the truth is they don't grow on trees and they're very scarce. For example, Richmond have got one. They stole that off of Gold Coast because Gold Coast had the ability to take that type of player, because it's finishing bottom all the time, with a number one pick. So most of the ones like that, they've been stolen off of other teams.
Do you think that a good big man is, particularly a good forward, a key position forward, is genetic rather? You've either got it or you haven't. You can't develop a good big man forward.
Genetic, absolutely genetic.
I think that's true as well. Actually, I think it's to be honest with you, I think it's probably luck. I think it's how they develop. But it just struck me that we had two really promising types in Elliot Himmelberg and Harry Deer before him, and neither of them kicked on, so which is a real shame. And DSG makes a really good point. Trent Henschel was probably the most unfortunate of that group because he did
was going to be very good. Going to be very good.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, his career got smashed. Anyway, that's a conversation to explore another time. Miles Paholke again didn't get a lot of the ball. But I feel like Miles just needs a block of games, Macca, because every time I see him, he just works his way into the game a little bit more.
Well, I've got him in the middle category because what you said, what he does well. he just doesn't touch it enough times. I think he touched it 10. Was that right?
Yeah, and I only had 7, but took 3 marks to kick the goal.
Yeah, he doesn't touch it a lot. And what he does do, he does right. If he could double the number of touches, he'd be a damn good player.
Well, who would you rather as your in and under midfielder at the moment? Matty Crouch or Miles Paholke?
Well, if I had to say in the long run, I'd probably go Matty, because Matty will get you a lot of ball. But I will say this for Paholke. I do like what he does when he gets the ball. He is actually trying to do something very creative each time he's got it, and often does. Yeah. But he really does have to increase the number of times he gets it feed before he's got to be convinced.
Yeah, and I think a contributing factor to that is his lack of a yard. I think if there's anything that he really needs to work on, and I think it would be worthwhile him getting a sprint coach, he needs to find a yard of pace.
Yep.
Shane McAdam, I reckon this kid is going to win games off his own boot for us going forward.
He's a tick.
He's a typical McAdam. He'll go periods of time where you won't see him, and then all of a sudden he'll bob up and kick 3 or 4 goals and win you a game of footy. And I just think he stays in the team and stays in the team and stays in the team.
Well, I'm backing you 100% all the way on that one, because he is part of the future. He's talented and he's got pace, and he can do the mercurial as well. And for him, it's just a matter of time of playing more games at this level, and each time he's just going to get better and better. I really like him.
Well, and, to be honest with you, I had my doubts about Shane, not his talent, but his ability to get himself AFL fit.
Yeah,
and the fact that he's worked so hard on getting himself AFL match ready is a testament to his commitment to make a career out of AFL footy. And he's got buckets and buckets of natural talent. And now that he's actually fit and conditioned for AFL footy, I just think you just keep playing him. Just keep playing him.
Well, you have to, because this is what we're looking for. I mean, it's not about this year. It's about next year and the years after that.
Yep.
And now we can say, tick, we've got one here. Now we will develop this guy and we'll give him every opportunity, because he's got it. He's got certain X factors that can, in the long run, make him a very good player for us.
Yeah, and we'll also take Mark of the Century one day. I can almost guarantee it. And I've saved the best till last. Will Hamill, I thought, was the best of our youngsters today. I wouldn't call it necessarily a breakout game, but I think we certainly got to see what Will Hamill is going to offer us going forward.
Well, he had a rickety start to the game, and as the game went on, he just got better and better and better. And I thought, in the last quarter, when everybody else was floundering and doing nothing, he several times he got the ball and he darted it off, and nice, beautiful disposal. This kid is going to be a very good player. I don't know whether do you play him on a half-back flank, or do you develop him as a wingman? Because I reckon he's going to be a real talent.
Well, I think you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Isaac Smith.
Yes,
and
that's why I mentioned the wing.
Yeah, I think it'll depend on the makeup of the team and the game style that the coach employs at the time. I think he could probably play either, but at the moment I like him off halfback. I think it teaches him a little bit of a defensive mode as well, which isn't necessarily bad. And we're a bit one pace with Duday having to do a little bit more defensively and being held a little bit more accountable defensively. We do need someone who can run off halfback, particularly as we seem to be playing Smith a little bit higher. And I think at the moment that's probably Will's spot. But I could see him certainly filling a wing role under a different set of circumstances quite easily.
Yeah, I know. The two ones that really, really pleased me at the game, because I was trying to, save something out of watching that crap that we watched. And McAdam and Hamill, they were the two that really said to me, yeah, we're going to be around and we're going to play a lot of games for you and we're going to be good players in the end.
Well, the thing that I like about Will Hamill the most is the first thing he does when he gets the ball is he puts in 5 yards. And so many of our players could learn from that, particularly our midfield. He gets the ball and he just puts in 5 quick steps.
Accelerates. He just accelerates.
Yep.
Yeah,
and he gets himself clear, and then he gives himself a second to be able to assess. Whereas a lot of our blokes, they're flat-footed, and they're having to assess the situation, whilst getting smashed. Whereas Will, the first thing he does when he gets the ball, he finds a free spot. He doesn't panic with the ball, and for a third gamer, that's impressive to be able to have that composure, to be able to think, all right, I'm just going to use my pace to get clear, and then I'm going to try and use the ball effectively. And he's only going to get better and better. And I'm glad that they've finally picked him. And again, barring injury or a real drop of form, he's another lad that just stays in the team now.
Yep, he's really only a 2 and a bit gamer, Fiend, because he had with that concussion, and he had started that game particularly well as well. So no, he's definitely part of the future.
Yeah. So
what do you think of Keys? I like Keys.
Oh yes, sorry, I forgot Benny Keys. I think Ben showed that he can be he's never going to be a star, but I think his work rate and his desire is going to be quite important for us as the team develops. I don't necessarily know whether he's part of our next premiership team, but I think he's an invaluable cog in our midfield over the next 2 to 3 years, if that makes sense.
Well, they were using him as a tagger, and they did that against Brisbane, and they did that again today. And look, he's not a bad tagger, and we've always done, when we've had a tagger, I think we've always gone a little bit better. Whereas, sometimes we just let all these stars run around like, unregistered chooks.
Yeah.
So really, I thought he's not bad at getting the ball himself in a contested situation.
That's right. It's been his disposal that's been the query, and I think it'll continue to be a bit of a query at times.
Yeah, variable. Definitely variable.
To have a bloke that can get his own nut but also can shut a bloke down, I think is particularly at the moment while we're going through this transition of turning over our midfield, and you want to be able to shut down the opposition's best player. There's no doubt that he probably would have got Fife had Fife played today.
Yes.
So I think Keys has certainly earned his spot. So, and the only other one, Benny Crocker, I didn't have much of a game, and I'd really like to see Ben influence the game more, notwithstanding the fact that it's tough on our forwards at the moment. But Benny Davis has got to get in there somewhere, and it's either going to be Tommy Lynch or Ben Crocker at the moment.
Yeah, well, look, he wasn't hopeless, and I do like the fact that he will compete for the ball. So I didn't put him in the good category, and I didn't put him in the bad category. He's just sitting there in the middle, and because if you're in the middle, you're open to go and be replaced if somebody better comes along.
Well, look, he had 14 touches and 8 marks, so he was probably the main conduit for us going forward. So it was certainly he wasn't our worst, but
his work rate was good.
Yeah, but I think we need to get Ben Davis in for more than 5 minutes. My preference would be that Ben Davis replaces Tom Lynch, but I could very easily see the way that Nix is trying to balance experience and youth at the moment, that it might be Ben Crocker, so Ben's got to make sure he makes every post a winner.
The other thing, I think we've mentioned all the players basically, except for Murphy, who I thought destroyed his own game with those 2 shots for goal, but does try very hard. The coach or the coaching panel thing.
Yes, that's where I was heading next to finish off this cast this week. It's far too early to make any sort of definitive judgments, but I'm starting to become a little bit concerned about Matty Nix, and I think it's unfortunate that Nix coming on board has coincided with coaching panels being stripped back because of the virus, etc., etc. I really I worry about coaches that come in with a game plan and they're unshiftable, irrespective of what our current squad looks like. And at the moment, it seems to me that we're not necessarily playing a game plan that suits our current list profile. And I think that's why we're struggling, because he's got us sitting back behind the ball and trying to slingshot, which is GWS all over. We don't have that team, Mac.
Exactly right. I wish we did. No, you're 100% right. And I am concerned about the coaching situation, in the sense that look, he's a rookie coach. He came in with his own, and rookie coaches generally think they can change the world, because nothing bad has happened to them up to that stage.
That's right.
But then once they start coaching, they find out there are bad things out there. But I think he came in there with his own game plan that he thought was going to work.
Yep.
And when you look at who he's got to help him, he's got Ben Hart and Say No More.
And Mickey Godden.
And Mickey Godden. And he doesn't have a senior assistant like Ben Rutten does alongside of him.
No.
Mattner's gone. You've just got people who were development coaches before, like Brett Riley.
Yeah.
Brett Riley. They come and they fill in. But
smell of an oily rag stuff.
Well, it is. And so what we really got is a rookie coach with a plan that he thought was going to work, which isn't, and with, I think, a sheer lack of assistance. So I think, from my point of view, it's all part of the master plan to get pick one. It's certainly got the right formula, even if it's not intended to do it.
Well, hopefully the AFL is listening, because you've just said that we're tanking, Mac, so that'll cost us about 3 years' worth of picks. I don't know. I'm not at any stage during this season going to put Nix's head on the chopping block, but
no, not me either.
At some stage, I'd like to see some semblance of a game plan, and he's probably just sorting players out and seeing where their heads are at and working out who's who. But I don't think he's doing himself any favours at selection at the moment. And I know his hands are probably a little bit tied. And the problem, I guess, Macca, is that the blokes not in the 22 are playing scratch matches, which are not played to the same intensity as an SANFL game or an AFL game. So it's very, very difficult for a coach to have confidence in bringing in a bloke after a block of 5 or 4 games or whatever, and think that they're going to be at the standard, because they haven't developed that match fitness. So it's certainly not an easy time for Matty Nix, and I do feel for him. The game plan has been confusing, but I think that's been exacerbated by the players not playing well.
What would you, with players like Gibbs and J-Mac, what do you think? Do you ever pick those boys, just give a game now and then, just so that they can say they played for the year? Or do you?
Well, I think J-Mac's very good on chat, but I don't think we pick him in our side. D-Mac on the
sorry, D-Mac.
Sorry, D-Mac.
He hadn't been around long enough. I've forgotten his bloody name already.
Look, I don't see any reason why you would pick D-Mac again. We've got Will Hamill in that role. I don't think David plays any other role. So I don't think we see David again unless there's injuries. Bryce Gibbs, probably the same, although we don't have the same level of depth in our midfield. So I could see Bryce coming in if, say, Brad Crouch got injured. But I don't think they get selected on their own merits, Macca, to be honest with you, either of those two blokes.
So what you're really saying is their only chance of playing a game is if a senior player got injured.
Look, I think so.
And they fill that position. Say like Brownie or something like that.
I think so. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. But it seems cruel when you know that they Gibbsy lost a lot of form, but if they were playing at their very best, that they could probably play better than the people that are in there. But it isn't really about this year, unfortunately for them. And it's really, I'd hate to be them, because you'd be sitting there thinking, look, some of these kids are not getting a kick, and you think, and I'm better than them. But unfortunately, that's not what we're about this year. Yeah. We're about the future.
There's a couple of lads that I'm worried about in the twos at the moment that are stagnating a bit. One is Geordie Butts, as we've mentioned. The other one is young Scholl. I'd really like to see him.
Lockie Scholl is one I really want to see in there, because he's got pace and he's got beautiful disposal.
Well, he's kind of dropped off calculations because I haven't seen him on an emergency list or anything like that. And
I know.
You don't know what's happening in these scratch matches or training or whatever. But I'd really like to see Lockie get an opportunity at some stage to show us what he's got. Obviously, Benny Davis as well needs to come in and get a block against poor Ben to at least close the discussion on whether he's part of our future or not. But look, to be honest with you, I think that's why I was surprised to see Hartigan get picked, because I would put Hartigan in the same category as Gibbs and David McKay. In that, there's just no value in playing them.
Well, he's either 29 or 30, Hartigan.
So, maybe Nix is giving it a third of the season just to sort out the chairs on the deck. We are only 5 games in, and he's only just getting used to the list. He's getting an idea of how much buy-in he's got from his senior players, and we may see a shift in tack, in the second third of the season. But I think.
Here's a question for you, Payne. We're playing St Kilda. I think it is St Kilda we're playing here, isn't it?
Yeah.
What chance do you give us?
Well, is that next week or is that round 7?
Oh, sorry, I might be getting ahead of myself there.
I think that's round 7.
Yeah,
but on current form, I don't give us any. On current form, I don't give us any chance. They've got a good little system going at the moment with Ratton.
Well, because Ratton's a good coach. I think he's a good coach.
Yep. I would have loved to have him oversee our rebuild, Brett Ratton.
Well, I would have liked to have him sitting alongside Nick, guiding him and helping.
No. I think Ratton would have been a very good selection for our rebuild. Not as an offsider. He was an offsider at Hawthorn. I think he wanted to be a main man, and I think he'll do a very good job at St Kilda because they bloody love him down there. Those players are playing for him.
And actually, by the looks of him, he's given the Bars a bit of a few of his bob.
Yeah, well, he's had a rough couple of years, mate, with his.
Oh, he has,
son.
hasn't he, personally? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So good on him for bouncing back, and I got a bit of a soft spot for him, and as a consequence for St Kilda at the moment, which is unusual. Not usually a team that I like. We've got the Weagles next week, Mac, and they bounced back a little bit this week. I don't think they're in top form, but one of their strengths is their midfield, and it's going to be a massive challenge, mate.
I can see us going down by about 10.
Yeah, look, I think so. There's nothing to give you any confidence. I think we tried hard against an underman Fremantle who've been struggling themselves and came up short. So I can't see us doing any damage in the short term with any of these teams, to be honest. And it's fair to say I can't see where our win comes from.
No, the other thing I must say is that the one thing that I have this year, which it doesn't hurt me as much because I have no expectations. I said to Mrs. Macken before the game, she said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, we're going to lose. It's just only about the margin."
It's a matter of when, how much.
Yeah, and so I said, normally I'm screaming at the telly and making lots of noise and all the rest of it. I'm just there calmly watching because I know we're no good. And I know that we've got all this work to do. But I do want to see a reaction. You cannot accept a game like Tex played today, and I do want to see Nick show a little bit of gumption, and at least for the one game, drop him.
Just as we round out the cast this week, mate, can you see a case for Mackesy coming in and playing up forward?
Yeah, I can. I can. I
can too.
I'd like to see him play up forward.
Yeah, I can too. I'd actually like them to try Mackesy up forward and Geordie Butts in the role that Mackesy's been playing ahead of Hartigan.
Support you 100% there.
That has a bit of a feel for the future. Look, thanks to everyone who's watched us on Facebook and YouTube with our live stream. Thanks to everyone who's listened to us on the audio stream on Spreaker. Everyone who's got around us on Discord and on the YouTube and Facebook chat. We love your input and it really makes the show for us. Don't forget, You can follow us on any of those platforms or on Twitter. You can go and have a look at any of our casts on aflcrowcast.com. If you want to support the cast, you can go to patreon.com/AFLCrowcast and flip us a little bit of your hard-earned. But most of all, thanks very much for listening. We really do appreciate it. Macca, that's all we got time for tonight, mate.
Well, we crammed a bit in there. And
hopefully Nicky will be back again next week for us.
The standard will go now, but Nicky will be here.
Yeah. Until then, look, thanks everyone. Stay safe during the week, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, good night all.